Welcome everybody to a special segment here on IT Pro TV. I'm your host, Don Pizzette, and I am joined in the studio today by Josh and Ryan from xByte Technology. So we're going to be showing off some new Dell hardware. I'm very excited about it. I love blinking lights and hardcore technology. This is going to be a lot of fun. But before I get ahead of myself, let's start with some basic introductions. And Ryan, why don't you introduce yourself to our viewers and give them a little idea of who you are?
Yeah, I'm Ryan Brown. I'm CEO with xByte Technologies. I've been with the company for about 9 years now. Excited to be here today.
And Josh, you're the technical arm. Why don't you introduce yourself to our viewers?
Yeah, so I'm Josh Fabry. I'm an engineer over at xByte, and I've been with the company for about 3 years.
All right, now on the table in front of us here, we've got a lot of hardware and 3 different servers, 3 different models, a lot of different specifications and configurations here. I don't even know where to start, right? So where should we start on all this?
So we can just start at the front here. They've added the LCD to a bezel type. So they have the standard security bezel and then also an LCD bezel. So you can still stand in front of it, see service tags, and also any issues that occur if you're hanging out in front of it. As well as, so you have to look it up since we don't have them, but it's a honeycomb style now. So instead of blocking all that view, you can actually see through it and see the hard drives there.
Yeah, Don, if you haven't already seen the videos out there, it's amazing going to Dell's site and seeing them with their phones. You're just like walking by the servers and the racks. It'll change. It'll show you the IP addresses of each server as you walk past it. So it's really amazing technology with Open Manage.
And that's driven by Bluetooth and an app on their phone?
Correct, Bluetooth now. They've moved it from NFC. It was, when it first came out, Apple, they restricted NFC so that no one else could use it except for them. And so now, in response to that, Dell's moved to Bluetooth. Now, the interesting thing, though, is that Apple just opened up NFC to other vendors. So it's kind of like, should they go back to NFC? But it'll probably stick with Bluetooth.
Yeah, that's just kind of shows how rapidly the dev environments change, the server rooms change, new technology comes out. And in this case, I mentioned new technology. Which models are we looking at here? What are we comparing? Because the honeycomb design, that's gone across the whole line, but the 3 models that we have here are pretty specific, right?
Yeah, we're actually looking at the R640, from left to right anyway, R640, R740, and then R740xd.
All right, now one of the biggest differences that I can see looking at it is the drive configurations, right? Obviously, a 1U server is not going to be able to contain a lot of drives. When we get to the larger servers, there is a ton of room. So can you give me a breakdown on what our storage options are here?
Yeah, with between all the servers, your 640 is going to start off as your bread and butter. So it's going to have 10 2.5-inch drives, and that's up front. One of the things Dell's done in this generation is they've opened it up to kind of stick drives wherever they could. So with the 640, they've actually, if you can see, they've got 2 drives in the back, so that gives you a total of 12 drives total. And that's the 2.5. They've also given you the ability to do 4 3.5s for the first time ever. So in the little 1U form factor, they have 4 3.5-inch drives up front. So if you're loading up with 12 terabytes, you got 48 terabytes right there. Now, if you need anything more than that, you go to the 740 in the middle. With the 740, the capabilities of up to 16 2.5s, or 8 3.5s, or also 8 2.5s. I would personally skip that one. I mean, Dell hates me saying this, I'm sure, but I would invest the money in going up one model over to the 740xd. You're going to get some future proofing for storage needs, and so that one, you're going to have an amazing number of drives. So you're going to have, just up front, you're going to have 12 3.5s or 24 2.5s. And you're going to have to keep up with my math here. In the middle, you have either 4 2.5s or 4 3.5s. And then in the back, it's going to be 4 2.5s or 2 3.5s. A lot of numbers out there. So I'll add up the math for you guys. It's 18 3.5s total, or 32 2.5-inch drives. The other amazing part with these servers is that they're NVMe expansion. So NVMe, it's kind of newer technology. Your data access times is amazing with these drives compared to your normal spinning disks. So your NVMe's, you're looking at 60,000 nanoseconds for data access times, when you're looking more like a 6 million when you're talking your normal spinning disks. So Dell's taken 4 NVMe drives per server in last generation. They've upped to 8 on the little 640. That's the first one we looked up. And to an amazing 24 NVMe drives on that 740xd. It's amazing 6 times the number of NVMe drives. It's an amazing amount of power they're putting in these boxes.
Now that's a lot of options, a lot of choice, right? And so obviously a customer gets the ability to pick the configuration that's right for them, right for their needs. Maybe they're mixing SSD and spinning disk, maybe mixing, can we mix 2.5 and 3.5-inch drives, or does it need to be one or the other?
You can sort of. Of course, if it's only 2.5-inch, you're not going to be able to shove a 3.5-inch drive in there. It just doesn't make sense. But if you have a 3.5-inch, they do have an adapter tray. So if you're running something like S2D, Storage Spaces Direct, if you're running any of the hyper-converged appliances that will allow you to do hybrid configurations and will adjust your storage, then what you can do is you can have your 3.5 inch for your bigger storage, and then you can put an adapter in there and get 2.5 inch if you need that solid state storage.
Now, you mentioned the extra drive bays in the back, right? So taking advantage of that extra room, putting some more drives in there. Am I losing other options? Because I know there's other options like RAID controllers and BOSS cards. Do I have to pick and choose between these? How does that all work out?
Well, you sort of do, because depending on what you're putting in the back of these, or wherever you're installing different parts, you're going to lose PCI slots. Since you mentioned too with the BOSS card actually stands for Boot Optimized Storage System. So what that's going to do, it's going to allow you to save 2 spots in the front of your server, and in the back here, then you'll have M.2 drives, 2 of them, either 120 or 240 gig, and you can put those in a RAID 1, skip your RAID controller completely, so you're saving that too. And I think Dell really made this to an alternative to having those 2 drives for your operating system or Hyper-V, which, I mean, you really can't do on SD cards like some people would love to do, as it's just going to write way too much to that, and you're going to be going through SD cards every 5 seconds.
Well, you mentioned like rapid writes or just heavy traffic, heavy throughput. When we have NVMe disks, Ryan, you mentioned how fast those are, incredibly fast. SSD is fast. The spinning disks, they're no slouch either. If we have 32 disks, that is a lot of storage. So is the server, does it have the throughput to be able to handle that? Is there a special RAID controller that has to be used? Or
Well, the RAID controller is actually the same as they had last generation for the most part. So with this generation, you have the H330. You also have the H740p. And both of those came from last generation. So the H740p is only going to give you 2 gigabytes of cache on there. Now, the new in this generation is going to be your H740p. And that's got 4 times that cache. So you're looking at 8 gigabytes of cache. We actually did some internal testing at xByte. So we said, hey, let's just see what happens. We took the exact same RAID controller because it works in both machines. We said, okay, same RAID controller in the 730, which is last year's generation, and the 740, what happens? As you'd expect, same exact IOPS. So, okay, that's great. You're not losing anything, you're not gaining anything. But then we put the more cache controller in there, and we were able to test it in a RAID 10 environment. We got 25% better performance just by switching that RAID card. So it's one of those things that, hey, just for a little bit of extra money, you can really get more bang for your buck out of these machines.
And it shows that there's not really just like a single default specification when you order a server like these. You really need to think about how you're going to be using it and what's the most important for you. I know for a lot of, especially database implementations, that storage throughput is super important. 25% is a big deal.
Yeah, and what it really pushes is those companies out there who kind of want to push the limits, that's what they're going to be able to make use of the new technologies. On the back of the machine, a bunch of these companies got together talking about throughput and created a new standard for 25 gig throughput in the back. So the new bandwidth out there kind of competing against 10 and 40. 40 was actually too expensive for these massive hyperscale data centers. So they came out with 25 gigs. And that's new now. Dell's kind of pushing it out. It's not necessarily for the every Joe Blow company out there, but for these big hyperscale environments, they're going to make use of the cost savings involved in a 25 gig. And so that's what you're going to see out there.
Now, I mentioned storage from a performance standpoint. Performance is a big concern for a lot of us, but it's not always disk that influences performance. CPU is kind of the next piece, and this is an area that has gotten, for me at least, maybe not for the general public, for me, has gotten more increasingly difficult to choose the right CPU. So what are our processor options like?
Well, there's a whole ton new of them. So there's 5 new families, actually. So there's a Bronze series, Silver series, 2 golds, and then a platinum series. And the platinum as well can go up to the 8180, the highest tier right now, which is a 28-core, 3.8 megahertz processor. Single processor, just by itself. It's a monster.
The nice thing with pushing the core count for a single processor is the fact that if your OS, your hypervisor, will make use of single socket licensing, then you're pushing it out to, correct me if I'm wrong on this, 28 cores? 28 cores?
28 cores.
28 cores, okay. There's a 28 and a 26, so 26% improvement over last generation. But 28 cores in an Intel processor, it's a lot in a single socket. So if your VMware or your OS licenses will let you do it, go single socket, you're kind of balancing that out. Because that big processor is going to be expensive. So you got to figure out, okay, what's my licensing cost versus my buying a single processor, kind of balance that out.
Now, I don't think we can talk about CPUs without mentioning some of the vulnerabilities that have been in the news a lot lately, right? A lot of hardware companies are having to respond to Spectre and Meltdown. Are we seeing any advancements here from Dell to help protect from those?
Dell has updated that with now what's called a cryptographically protected firmware. So basically, when you're downloading firmware to update your system, it's going to have a digital signature in there, and it's going to check up against it. So if you download something that's not actually right, it's going to check and let you know, hey, you probably don't want to install this. So it's really nice.
Yeah, and that's the type of traffic that when it's inline, when it's passing through RAM, passing through CPU, it can be intercepted, read. That's really what Meltdown and Spectre are all about. So it's good to see protection built in like that, even though the processors are probably still a bit of a work in progress. We'll see where that goes.
Yeah.
And there's always something new on the world of security there. All right, so let's see, what else do we have? I just mentioned memory, and looking at these, the servers they actually look fairly identical as far as the amount of memory bays. Is that true, or are there different memory options?
Yeah, actually, all three of these are still 24 DIMM slots, as well as before. That's what we had. So really didn't change anything in the amount of RAM you can put in there, but they have increased the size. So now you have 128 gigabyte RAM, and it costs quite a bit, but it is nice. You can go up to 3 terabytes of storage for memory in there. Also, they've added, with the same RAM, you can do a 2666 speed now. That is only available, though, in the 5122, the Gold series, and then as well as the 61 series and up. I mean, if you're trying to really pump these out, they're giving you a lot of options, as well as they've also introduced a new technology called the NVDIMMs. So those NVDIMMs, non-volatile DIMMs, they're going to have, on the module itself, they're going to have a DRAM chip and then also a flash storage chip. So basically, if your server goes down, you lose power, whatever it may be, it's going to copy that data from the DRAM over to the persistent flash storage and keep that there for up to 72 hours. It does take roughly about a minute. I know it's a long time, but roughly a minute. And so when you get that server back up, it's just going to write it back over also in about a minute. And you're back up and running a lot faster than you used to be.
And you mentioned that was part of did you say the Gold series?
For the 2666, the speed, that's only in the Gold 5122 series and the 61 and on.
All right, so in the past it used to be with memory, we just worried about how much we wanted, right? But now we've got to think a little bit more about which CPU is paired with that to take advantage of the speed.
Yeah, there's a little bit of stipulation in some of these parts now, but still works out.
And you also have those NVDIMMs, which are impressive as far as performance goes. Anytime there's new technology out there, a lot of times we get asked, okay, what are the use cases involved in that? Because you're like, okay, there's amazing power. I mean, those NVDIMMs, you're looking at 150 nanoseconds data access times. So really fast technology. But who's going to use that? So what we're starting to see that come out in different applications. So SQL Server is one of the first ones. And what they've done is they've shown how you can take your log files, move those to NVDIMMs. And what that does is that gives you instant commits. So one of the things what'll happen with SQL databases is anytime there's a commit, it's got to take that data, move it to persistent storage. And with NVDIMMs, that's memory and persistent storage in one. So the second there's a commit, it's instantly in persistent storage, and the system can move on. So it makes databases much faster. Beyond even just the data access times, just the application itself is now much faster because of the technology.
All right, so we've talked a little bit about storage, CPU, memory, right? The three of the big performance areas of a server. The fourth one is networking. So what do we have that's new in the world of networking on these servers?
Networking is the biggest thing is going to be the 25 gig we talked about before. You're starting to see any of your switches out there kind of come cross-compatible. So you're getting your 100, your 40, your 25, kind of all in one, and it kind of can work with that. So that's going to be the big push. And what's interesting is as a database administrator or as a network administrator, and as you're looking at things, you kind of got to pick a standard. It's really confusing out there with all these different standards out there. So if you take your environment and say, okay, let me look at something Dell has live optics that you can use to kind of look and see what your traffic looks like. You can look and see what your bottlenecks are, and then kind of just pick what's going to make most sense for you. So if it's 25, if it's 40, if it's 100, if it's 1, if it's 10, kind of just figure out what you need in your environment, and then match that with what Dell or whoever offers.
what we're talking about here mostly are these the onboard adapters. We still have we can add in, or is the PCIe bus limited to 25 gig? Can we still put in a 40 gig card if we want?
You can still put in a 40 gig card. With your network daughter cards, I believe, and Josh, you have to correct me on this one, but I believe there is not a 40 gig network daughter card onboard option, but there is a 25 gig network daughter card onboard option.
That's correct.
And I know, on the world of networking, we usually make up for that with quantity of servers instead of having single servers that are that high bandwidth. So lots of options there, which is good to see. All right, so we've tackled those are kind of the 4 core areas that most of us deal with. But on the compute side, I know we're hearing more and more about graphics processors, which in the past on a server, you just had the most simple video card possible. But because of compute power now, we have a lot of options, right?
Yeah, well, they've increased it 50% this time for the amount of graphics cards you can put in these machines. Well, anyway,
50%, Josh. That's amazing.
Tell us more.
I would say, well, not for the 640 though. So we're still looking at the 740 and the 740xd, but yeah, 50%. So really, I just mean we went from 2 to 3. So not a huge jump, but it is nice, as well as increasing the amount of PCI slots you have. So really, just went up 1 as well in those 2 other machines. With that though, so you're doing 3 double wide or 6 single wide GPUs in these. The only thing though, with if you're using the 740xd, you're going to have the 24 bay 2.5 inch if you really want to max it out.
Yeah, we joke about the GPUs and being 50% improvement, but if you're dealing with any kind of VDI, that actually is a big deal because you now have 50% more users on a single box, so it can cut down if you're renting rack space. And cut down on your costs as far as that goes.
Well, and because we have the room to put in, you said up to 6 single wide cards, or even just the 3 double wide, that's not just an increase in power there, but an increase in power consumption, right? So we have to think about our power supplies?
Yeah, they've increased that too. So now you have up to 1,600 watt or 2,000 watt if you're really loading this thing up. As well as though, like Ryan said earlier with the RAID cards, you can actually use the 495 watts, the 750s, and the 1100 watts in these machines. So there's a lot you can actually bring over from the 13th gen or the previous generation into the 14th gen and still be up and running and ready to go.
Now, for the smaller server, it supports the same power supplies, but we really wouldn't need it there because you just don't have the room for the GPUs, right?
Right, exactly.
Okay. All right, so that is a lot to kind of jam into these small boxes. I'm always impressed by how much they add in, how much they're able to improve and adapt each year. But have we left anything out? Are there any other bells or whistles that we need to highlight in these?
Since we kind of just went over it, with the power supplies and the GPUs and such in the back there, for the other third-party GPUs that you may be using, I'm sure everybody uses quite a few of those, they've actually, with the iDRAC 9, they've updated that with another feature, basically specific cooling. So if you have a third-party GPU, you can set it up in a GUI form now rather than a command line and set a certain wattage, and it'll automatically cool that how it should for you.
I hadn't even thought about that in these servers, we have very specifically designed airflow, right? Lots of fans, lots of plastic shrouds to channel airflow through. When you have that many graphics cards in there, that's a lot more temperature than a normal server is normally pushing.
Very hot.
And it handles that no problem? It's all they've designed to spec, I suppose?
Yeah, these are great. They've really designed it very well now.
Yeah, all the Dell cards themselves, they'll auto-adjust because they can talk to each other through the firmware. But anytime you use third party, that's why they kind of had to introduce that because it didn't know the wattage and how to adjust for that.
And are you guys seeing a lot of deployments like that? Heavy compute where people are relying on GPUs, or is this still kind of a fringe thing?
I mean, the GPUs are really important when you're looking at like the heavy machines, the 740xd. Obviously, not you. Probably, as Ryan was stating before, you probably wouldn't go with the 740 in this case. It just doesn't have everything that you would need, and you might as well just go to the 740xd. But yeah.
We are seeing a resurgence in the VDI environment. So that kind of started up many years ago. Didn't really go too far. It kind of started. I always thought there was a ton of hope in it, just because you don't have to replace workstations ever. You just have kind of dummy terminals if you wanted to, or old PCs that you had. But I've seen more and more people kind of looking at that. I believe we're in a new refresh cycle for Windows. That's kind of driving some of that VDI.
That's all. It's almost like going full circle, kind of getting back to the mainframe days in a way.
Yeah.
Everything's being driven by that server. All right, well, gentlemen, let's talk a little bit about why you were able to bring these servers out here for us to see. At xByte, you guys are in a neat position that you have access to a lot of this hardware due to your relationship with Dell. So why don't you tell the viewers a little bit about what xByte does and how you're able to help people with server configurations like these?
Sure. Yeah. At xByte, we're unique in our partnership with Dell. We sell only Dell Certified refurbished servers. So when you get anything with us, you're going to get the full Dell warranty. So just as if you bought it from Dell. The unique thing with our certified refurbished boxes is that these really are not boxes that were ever broken. I mean, you think of a cell phone. I don't have my cell phone on me right now, but if you had your cell phone, you think refurbished means it was previously broken. That can't be further from the truth with servers. For us, it may be something that, let's say someone used it proof of concept for a week. So that is what we get from Dell, and we offer to our customers. And that's why Dell's allowed us to put their warranty on it, so you get your same on-site warranty. So we're a partner just like any of the other partners out there. If you want to go new, we do also have those options. We actually, in our warehouse, we have about, any given time, 400 to 1,000 servers to kind of meet your immediate needs.
I know one thing that you guys do that I really appreciate is custom configurations, right? When you're on the Dell website and you're using their configurator, you only get so many choices, and sometimes it's just not quite right. Or we end up in what I mentioned earlier in this interview, which is maybe I don't know which CPU is exactly going to align with what I'm choosing. You guys are able to do that and still maintain the warranty there as well, right?
Exactly. And you can even call in and we can go through the configurator on our website with you. So we can really make it a lot easier for you if you need it.
Yeah, as you're dealing out there with companies, one of the things to look out for is some of the stuff that we know that we bring to the table. Like, there are actually 3 different types of heat sinks. So if you don't put the right heat sink in, you can burn out your server faster, and you wouldn't realize that. So with our expertise, we kind of protect our customers from some of that.
That is excellent, and it's definitely a valuable service. Something you guys should all check out. Jump over to their website, which is xbyte, xbyte.com. You can see everything that they do. A great group of people. Very, very helpful. All right, well, gentlemen, I appreciate you being here in the studio with me today. Do you have any parting words for our viewers before we wrap up?
Just hey, as Don said, check out our website, xbyte.com. For more technical details, including some of the testing we talked about, check out xbyte.com/blog for our blog. And if you need any help, give us a call. We're always here to help you.
All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, I do appreciate you tuning in. Hope you guys enjoyed it. And, be on the lookout. We'll have more interviews like these with xByte because they get access to all the toys that we love to play with and don't always get a chance to get our hands on. So we'll try and keep getting more of this type of content into our library. All right, thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next time.